Day 7, August 13th, midday with 60 degrees ambient temperatures. I just downed a bull and salvaged all edible meat. The game plan at this point is to retrieve all game meat from the kill site and prepare it for air transport. Salvage requirements are met and preservation starts now. But instead of heading back to Caribou with my harvest, I'm going to have the pilot drop me and Chachi off on a river in Game Management Unit 23 to demonstrate how to preserve game meat in extremely warm Arctic climates. Now I'm using a rollaway backcountry sled that I made from a sheet of UMHW plastic.
This harness is something that I made out of a ski joring belt and just some old pack straps and sewed some new webbing on it. Nothing fancy, but it definitely allows me to distribute that load all over the course of my body as opposed to a backpack or multiple trips without a sled.
According to local belief, I represent the non-local sport hunter who places a high value on antlers and less concern for game meat care. I'll prove this belief wrong, and in the process I'll teach all hunters how to effectively master game meat care with climate control and backcountry savvy. And the first step is to create a shady resting spot for this meat and prepare it for air transport. The current status of this game meat is in a transitional flux of critically high deep tissue temperatures. Since it just came off the carcass, the current deep tissue temperature is close to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and that needs to be reduced quickly. My number one priority is to reduce these temperatures to prevent bone sour and spoilage. This episode delivers sound backcountry skills that highlight effective meat care and transport strategies based on temperature, moisture, and spoilage control.
It's a done deal. Took a lot of time. I worked through lunch and I'd call the pilot to let him know that I got a bull and he should be on his way, headed our way, maybe in the next hour or so. So I've got a lot of work to get camp broken down as well as that boat put away, and then do a cleanup around here and get ready to jump on the plane. Yeah, that's 60 degrees. That means it's only going to get warmer throughout the day. Meat's been off the bones, off the carcass, about 2 hours. That sled stops that UV radiation. Makes a good shade, good temporary shelter for one caribou in my opinion.
These rising ambient temperatures usually mean caribou slow their pace and move only when they must, and during the coolest hours of the day and night. So I got real lucky with this straggler swimming into camp. But I'm about to get picked up and delivered to the south side of the Brooks Range on a river of historic use for these caribou. However, in the past decade, temperatures there are often 15 to 20 degrees warmer than this spot and this time of year, which explains to me why caribou lag this far north and east until several weeks later when it cools down. It makes perfect sense that this delay and shift of area use is based largely on climate and temperature. All pilots who transport game meat into and out of Game Management Unit 23 must comply with the Mandatory Orientation for Pilots program. This mandate was designed to minimize user conflicts among local subsistence hunters, non-local hunters, and guides and transporters. They cannot transport hunters with game meat within Game Management Unit 23 without this department-approved education course and certificate. Google Unit 23 Pilot Orientation for more details.
Don't you let my baby ride, man. Don't you let my baby ride, man. Don't you let my baby ride, man. Don't you let my baby ride. Quiet ride. Quiet ride. Quiet ride. Quiet ride. Don't you let my baby ride, man. Don't you let my baby ride, man. Don't you let my baby ride, man. Don't you let my baby ride. Quiet ride. Quiet ride. Quiet ride. Quiet ride.
What do you think, Chachi? Thought we were going home, didn't you? You still feeling pretty poor? You like those mountains? Just got landed here and use what resources I had, which was 2 tarps, a double up tarp so that close to zero UV comes in, and maximize the use of that shade for as long as possible. I'll just have to keep moving the meat and the tarp as the sun rotates, and it's probably going to end in its way here. It's going to be going right in my face, and then we'll come back up over here. Feeling good so far. Just keep up the good work. Temperature in the shade 79 degrees. Whew, that's hot. Those caribou are 200 miles from here. Make a makeshift shade, pop-up shade for Chachi, because she's dying out here, man. There's no trees, no anything for a long way. You want shade out here on this gravel bar, you're gonna have to make it. And that meat is resting at 80 degrees. When that sun goes down, I have got to get it cooled. It's going to be a great challenge in this unit, in this area, in this immediate climate. Let's hope for cloud cover. Day 1 of game care, day 7 of my trip. Environment around the meat is 80 degrees in the shade. and it's resting until I can do something more with it tonight when it cools down a bit. If it's this hot again tomorrow, we may have to immerse it. We'll make those decisions as we go.
The goal during the first 24 hours is to reduce meat core temperatures to 50 degrees Fahrenheit and lower. And this is challenging when daytime temperatures reach 80 degrees. But I'll show you how to use shade and wind to accomplish this goal. Along with shade and maximizing airflow, meat bag rotation is performed every hour or less. And this helps to dry and cool this game meat effectively by ensuring all sides get equal exposure to wind and allow heat dissipation and tissue drainage. When ambient temperatures are 70 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, more frequent bag rotations is prudent, and repositioning them onto fresh, cool rocks can help expedite cooling this meat.
Well, talking meat strategies at the moment is anytime it's above 60 degrees Fahrenheit in camp, make it a habit of rotating meat every hour, making sure that every edge gets ventilation, and here's why. It hadn't been off the carcass 12 hours. It's been in bags on this beach, let's see, noon, 8 hours, and temperatures this warm, already got maggot larvae, so you can imagine any exposed meat's going to have maggots on it. So that is the challenge out here, is preservation and transport. We'll monitor the first deep core temperatures at 24 hours. Right now it's just going to keep an eye on that sun. Got a good storm cloud that's just a cumulus that's giving us some reprieve right now at 8 o'clock p.m. But we don't have any other clouds in sight, and it's going to be at least 4 hours of sunlight in our face. Keep at it.
As the sun moves across the sky, shade from a tarp actually changes shape and location, so this can keep hunters busy chasing the coolest areas underneath it.
So it's getting about 25-minute rotations. Temperature 68 degrees. A lot better than 78.
Blowflies can become active at temperatures of 50 degrees Fahrenheit. They'll become very active at 55 degrees, and they're persistent when it's warmer than 60 degrees. Their fly hatch prefer these warmer temperatures and require moisture, nutrients, and a stable alkalinity or a low acid environment to develop. So do spoilage bacteria.
These rocks are really cool in the shade. Rocks are your friend for sure when you're trying to cool down meat. They're a little cooler than the air temperature, so I like to lay them right directly on there so that you transfer all that heat out of those big thick cuts of meat into those rocks, and it'll dissipate into the environment. Recharge, recool, just keep rotating them to new rocks in the same shade. Fresh coolness. It's like a mini refrigerator with this wind.
In extremely warm climates, say above 70 degrees Fahrenheit, gravel bar rocks can be flipped over so the coolest sides touch the game bags. This convection cooling helps to more effectively cool this meat down. As the sun moves closer to the horizon, shade from tarps thins out and elongates due to the angle of the sunlight. So hunters need a backup plan to create other forms of shade to guarantee their meat stays well protected. By late evening, the low angle of the sun renders this tarp less effective. So instead of a horizontal provision, I decided to construct a vertical shade with a wall of stones. This adds hours of protection and reduces my overall energy expenditure of relocating this meat so often under the tarp.
68 degrees. Ow.
By midnight, ambient temperatures had dropped 20 degrees in 4 hours, and this goes a long way toward cooling this meat. Within the next 6 hours, I expect temperatures around these game bags to drop another 15 degrees.
6 a.m., 45 degrees.
Now that I've maintained the coolest possible environment for this game meat for the first 20 hours, and while temperatures are below 50 degrees where blowflies are inactive, it's time to clean and shock the meat surface to remove and retard bacterial threats that may be developing on this food.
It's been 22 hours since this animal died.
I think before the blowflies get in here and get real active, I think it's a good thing to get all the surface of all the meat sprayed with citric acid and laid out and get it crusty as much as possible before the flies show up. Sensory checks are performed at least twice a day to verify the edible status of all meat surfaces, including deep tissue core temperatures to help monitor bone sour threats.
Hear that? That's what your game bags are supposed to do. Dry around your meat. Get this cleaned up. Get a deep tissue core temperature and let's see how we're doing. 54 degrees. That's good for 24 hours, 23 hours post-harvest, and 20 hours off the carcass. I'm gonna remove anything that's looks suspicious and foreign material, debris, fat. Anything that might spoil or is going to be difficult to preserve out here. So that's what I'm going to do right now. And a lot of these legs have good fat on them, but you want to remove all that because it just won't stay. And that way the meat underneath will dry.
Common bacteria thrive in temperatures warmer than 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and colonies can double in volume every 20 minutes when temperatures are warmer than 60 degrees. Plus, bacteria also require a low acid environment and nutrients to grow. A hunter's next step is to remove surface fat, hair, and dirt, debride the wound channels, and all potential source contaminants. After these steps, citric acid can be applied to shock the meat surface and any bacteria that still remains with a high acid mixture to retard bacterial growth. This technique provides an edge with meat preservation.
There you go. Chunks like that, no need to keep. Let the birds eat it. Alright, what I'm doing here is I'm going to pour some citric acid. I usually buy citric acid by the half pound at any local feed store that sells horse food or other animal food. They usually have citric acid. You can order it online too. A quick Google search for citric acid powder. Don't get the granules, they don't dissolve very well. And for this little amount, probably half an ounce at the very most. because it's only a 4-ounce spray bottle or 6. Make sure that's a real acid concentration. Oh yeah, nice and acidic. Once you get one ready, pick off all the hairs that you see. And let that dry real well before you flip it over. Let one side dry real well and then keep on moving.
The goal is to apply an acid mist of less than 2 pH because bacteria and blowflies develop when surface environments are 5.5 pH. Therefore, our target is 5 pH on all meat surfaces. Citric acid is not the be-all, end-all of meat preservation, but it does help a great deal in warm climates. After this initial dose, hunters should reapply another dose every other day when core temperatures are above 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Discontinue the use of citric acid after day 4, as studies show bacteria levels are generally stable at this point. As long as the meat remains dry and core temperatures are maintained near 50 degrees, you're good to go. These cool rocks provide better ventilation than a tarp, so I let the meat rest open to air and dry nicely before rebagging. It goes without saying, but if this technique is used, make sure the rocks are clean and grit-free. You don't want sand all over your meat.
Front shoulder about 48 degrees. That's good. It's even better than hindquarters, obviously. So the name of this game is anything that can hold moisture will and does. Remove the threat. Every time you do a thorough meat inspection, it needs to include smelling all surfaces.
Sensory checks include what you see, what you smell, and what you feel on the surface, as well as what you know about deep tissue temperature status. And the meat handler must effectively manage each of these senses to make good, sound decisions about this food.
Making sure that it still smells like edible food, and if it starts to smell tainted, you better get busy removing the threat. The neck pieces have a lot of connective tissue and a lot of folds. And what you see here is that connective tissue with fat attached, and moisture and nastiness gets caught under the surface. So this is why this kind of stuff is important to remove in the early trimming stages. Alright, what you see here is those inner loins above the lung. This is some belly skirt. This is neck meat. This is also neck meat. This is more belly skirt trimmed off in pieces. This is all the rib meat that Chachi has not eaten, and she will continue to do so. More belly skirt and the brisket. Got a little bit more trimming left to do on that, and then we're all done. So that constituted about 45 minutes of work from start to finish. First temperature check, to all the trimming, to all the citric acid application. And right now it's just before it hits 50 degrees and the bugs start coming out. Just gonna let it get a crust on it before I rebag it into fresh bags. And sometime today we'll wash these old dirty bags and get them back in circulation day after tomorrow. And that cycle just repeats over and over every day. You got to be diligent with your meat out here. With these temperatures, the environment is against you.
Bone sour can spoil an entire hindquarter, so diligent sensory checks are necessary when it's this warm. The early warning system is your nose. If it turns sour, debone that hindquarter immediately and trim away a 1/2 inch border around the bone. Then, spray it with citric acid and let it dry.
Good shape.
Carry on with your meat care duties. Weight distribution is a critical factor of boat performance, and the first time loading a raft is always an exercise in trial and error. Each time you'll dial in what goes where for best on-the-go performance. The smaller the raft, the greater the challenge with this task.
My seat, camera bag there off the side. Those are all carabinered in. Rifle, that's where the fly rod will go. And hook set, all carabinered. And the meat and chachi will go right there.
The basic rule when loading meat onto a raft is to provide even distribution of all cargo weight on board the watercraft. All meat should have airflow access to at least 3 sides at all times, and game bag rotations throughout the day will help you achieve this goal. Secure the meat to the raft with a rope or cam straps, but leave enough slack to easily rotate them on the go. I prefer to ready a small tarp in place so that when temperatures climb or precipitation falls, I can quickly employ overhead cover.
Noon temperature check, 58 degrees. Super sunny. Whatever those fish are in those holes are not char. So that's disappointing. Couldn't even get a grayling to rise. So I'm just going to make miles, get out of this heat as fast as possible.
Again, bag rotation should be done every 1 to 2 hours to improve airflow and foster surface drying. Once temperatures reach 60 degrees Fahrenheit, loose-fitting shade is prudent to control UV exposure and the heat index around these bags. I had traveled about 15 miles today, mostly walking the raft through shallow braids. By 7 p.m. on August 14th, day 8, the ambient temperature had reached 65 degrees. I needed to find a cool, well-ventilated, shady spot to rest this meat. And when available, natural shade like this willow line reduces energy expense by not having to create your own shade.
See, it's the end of day 8. 7 p.m. 65 degrees Fahrenheit. A hot one today. Whew. A lot of exposure, a lot of dragging. I I've never seen the Kelly this low, but I couldn't put another 10 pounds on this raft. Have the energy to do this day after day. Got another full day of rafting tomorrow. Flipping meat, trying to shade it. Same routine as today, just repeated tomorrow. And rotating this about every hour until it cools off. It's already drying out. Real nice.